Hello everybody, welcome back to Untangling Braid. As you can see, we have one world left to go, really 2 worlds left to go, but we're down to world 6 here. So we're gonna go through it, and as we'll see, if world 5, the previous one that we covered, was all about, it was kind of like a bland transitional world, but one that illustrates Braid's rules by how well it sticks to them and how all the worlds kind of integrate together. Then world 6 is the opposite. It kind of illustrates the formal constructions by like breaking them, parodying them, having all these sort of exceptions and special things about it. So we'll get right into it. Actually, before we talk about the text, I want to talk about the art here in the overworld. So basically we have 4 of everything. There's a whole dining room with 4 chairs. There's like a bajillion candles here. There's like a fancy chandelier up top with like a candelabra. And I think this is like 6 candles down here, like 4 or 5 up there. But it's a clear contrast with the kitchen area where there's 2 of everything. There's 2 chairs. There's 2 little lights. 2 little lights on the table, and so on and so forth. And in general, looking at the lighting, I forget if I talked about this in episode 5. We have like 1 light up there and then 1 little lamp on the table. And then in the kitchen, we've got 2 lamps up top and 2 lamps on the table, because this is like about relationship, right? World 4 was kind of about personal introspection, the journey through time, how he's developing, versus this one is about decisions. It's about like binaries, and it's about negotiation and interpersonal relationships. So continuing that sequence, World 6. It's like about society, right? This is that quote from Walden where he says he has 3 chairs in his house, 1 for solitude, 2 for companionship, and 3 for society, right? So it's this dining table. It's like this formal space, kind of like alienating space. You're going to move slowly, just like the slow motion ring mechanic of this world, because you're following these rules of etiquette. You're also going to move slowly because you're carrying this freaking fine china everywhere. He has like all this formal fancy stuff, and candles burn down very slowly. You can look at that fine china like way up there on that top shelf. And imagine kind of how fragile it is. It might fall down. You want to be careful when you're moving around fine china, so you're going to step slowly. Everything's going to be kind of in this formalized, ritualistic slow motion when you're like having a fancy dinner. So that'll tie into obviously the themes of slow-mo, but also the themes of kind of like alienation, hesitance, and Tim feeling lost in this world. And then just to complete the lighting stage, here we have a lot of lights, but they're very dim, coming from different directions. This is kind of magical, right? That's kind of the theme of this world, and it's nighttime. You have windows up there so you can see through to the night sky, versus here it's a very like bright kind of daytime look. So you kind of have like day and night for these 2, and then this kind of like 1, 2, 4 solitude, companionship, society theme for these bottom worlds. Of course, this nice rich purple just color coding this world. All right, so before we even get into the text, there's something different about this clouds, which is the title. It's Hesitance. It's not Hesitance and Time, or Time and Hesitance, like all the other ones were time and something. And this is the first of the kind of like eerie, kind of unsettling rule breaks. They're minor things, but Braid is such a tightly constructed game that you kind of notice when they've changed. So I think one of the reasons why this title change happens is just like a game mechanical thing. So if you watch like speedruns of people playing Braid, when they get to World 6, you don't actually need to rewind time to solve almost any of the World 6 puzzles. They're all solved just exclusively with manipulating the slow-mo ring. So there's less interaction with like the fundamental mechanic of the game. So you can interpret the titles of all the other worlds, like Time and Forgiveness, is just like introducing the rewind mechanic, so it kind of shows up in both worlds. And then each of these want time and mystery. It's like, okay, it's rewind plus the magic, or time and place. Like, you still have rewind even though you're also doing the back and forth thing, and it's kind of about the interplay of what makes those different. And time and decision. So with the rewind is really crucial. Versus here, they could have like taken the rewind out of here entirely, and they still would have had a nice game. I guess the justification for the first one, where it seems like it gets a double word for time and forgiveness, would be that it's the interaction of the rewind mechanic with just the pre-existing platformer level design, and it's like, oh look, I can make the level design really hard and counterintuitive in some ways, but because you have this rewind mechanic, actually, it works out and they mesh together. So is that, I think, is part of the explanation for the title, but part of it is also it just wants to dwell on this idea of hesitance and draw our attention to it, as we'll talk about as we go through the story. So, perhaps in a perfect world, the ring would be a symbol of happiness. It's a sign of ceaseless devotion. Even if he will never find the princess, he will always be trying. He will still wear the ring. But the ring makes its presence known. It shines out to others like a beacon of warning. It makes people slow to approach. Suspicion, distrust, interactions are torpedoed before Tim can open his mouth. In time, he learns to deal with others carefully. He matches their hesitant pace, tracing a soft path through their defenses. But this exhausts him, and it only works to a limited degree. It doesn't get him what he needs. Tim begins to hide the ring in his pocket, but he can hardly bear it. Too long tucked away, that part of him might suffocate. So, this text is interesting. It kind of breaks the format of the rest of the text. The rest of the text has followed this kind of classic. I mean, it's hard because each world is different. But usually it like leads in with a relationship to the princess, and then it kind of talks about it talks about the kind of relationship metaphor, and then the kind of like sci-fi, like what if time actually worked this way metaphor, and then kind of has this image of like going forward, like you're going into the world, but in World 6 we don't really get that, because the princess is very, so we've gone from like questing after her to leaving her behind to all these different relationships, to like seeking her in the future, and here she just shows up right at the beginning and not in the rest of the text. Even if he will never find the princess, he's like given up hope. And then the rest of these are not about the princess at all. They're not really about Tim's quest. They're about the ways that Tim's quest makes it awkward for him in society, alienates him from everyone else. So we get we get this, people are slow to approach, because he's got this obsession. We'll talk about this more when we get the painting together at the end of the game. But there's this kind of critique of society or something. I mean, it's less in Braid than in The Witness, because in The Witness the game is more confident that like the witness has the correct philosophy, versus in Braid, of course, the lesson is that like Tim doesn't have the correct philosophy. He's like obsessive. He's he can't see the interiors of things. He's just going after this kind of like romanticized kind of delusional idea of enlightenment, but that sets other people off, right? They don't want to interact with this weird guy, or they can sense that he's not interested in the things that they're interested in, and that difference is like complicating his life, right? Because he's got this quest to, this is like, it's like the expiration of, this is similar to some of the vibes that I tried to continue in my More Now Than Ever mod. It's like he's been on this chase for so long, but she's always in another castle, and in another castle, it's not, he's not going to get there. And so it's like this hopeless search, just like I mean, it's easy to be zealous about like the search for truth when you're like 20 years old or something and you're just finding out about the world. But then like time goes on and it's like the experience is so similar. It seems less and less plausible that you're going to make it, and discover these amazing things after many years of everything being, the same. So he's kind of slowly, his zealous energy is like eroding away. He's kind of pledged to himself, like, no, this is important. Like, I'm going to stick with this, like, even if there's just a sliver of hope, maybe even if there's no hope, like, I'm going to still be dedicated to this ideal of this, like, truth seeking, trying to understand the universe, trying to go after this stuff that Tim wants. But it complicates his interactions with society. We get, and then that, as this kind of wears on him, he changes his behavior to suit the world that he's in, right? So he's going to try and figure out better ways to work with other people to kind of hide the fact that he's like this obsessive philosopher, truth seeker person, and, just be practical, like get a job that pays the bills or, make small talk with folks. But it's exhausting him, and it's kind of, the more that he's changing himself, he's getting away from that search, right? He knows that it's compromising these ideals that I have. So this is like, he's not being true to himself, hiding the ring, which symbolizes his search for the princess and his kind of obsession with this, quest for enlightenment and truth. So I think that's the main part of the story. It's about like Tim and his relationship with society and how he's been alienated by everyone who seems to have such different goals and everything. Another thing I wonder about is if there's a bit of a like premonition Manhattan Project type thing. So he talks about there's like interactions with other people are framed in like a military way, right? That interactions are torpedoed before Tim can open his mouth. They're suspicious and distrusting. Like this is like you can imagine the suspicion and distrust is like the diplomatic tension that happens as like the war is building up. Interactions being torpedoed are like one of the reasons that America finally, we got into the war because of Pearl Harbor, I guess, but one of the things that annoyed a lot of nations before that kind of would drag them into the World Wars I and II were like those U-boats cruising around shooting all the civilian ships and stuff. So this is kind of like a military association here, and then it's like now Tim is responding, right? He matches their hesitant pace, tracing a soft path through their defenses. This is kind of a strange thing. You'd think if you're trying to deal with others carefully, you'd like be accommodating them or partnering with them or something, but it's phrased as like an attack, a soft path through their defenses. And so maybe this is kind of like the allies like gearing up and fighting back and stuff. But this exhausts him and only works to a limited degree, right? All these conventional weapons, like, how long is it going to take to invade Japan or whatnot? So this might just be a nod to the kind of military context in which the Manhattan Project existed, and which most people were thinking about it, right? The people who are thinking about understanding the fundamental physics of the universe is actually a very niche interest of a couple of physicists with like weird, personal takes and stuff. And also the kind of analogy of like diplomacy for interpersonal relationships is interesting. But back to the story of Tim and the princess and the ring and all that, right? So like, what is the ring symbolism? Obviously, it's like symbolic of his search for the princess and stuff. But like, where would you get a ring? You might have a ring left over after a divorce. So like, maybe this is kind of, it's like. And that would kind of fit with the pattern of the worlds, reading it forward, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where at first he's like with the princess, or, he's like, oh, the princess just left me and I'm trying to find her. And then he's like imagining like, oh, what would have happened if I stayed, or, if things had gone differently. And then here he's like kind of still wearing the ring or something, but that doesn't quite fit with like, even if he will never find the princess, of course. So like, that, partially that's just a reflection of the 6 worlds being 6 different perspectives rather than one continuous story. But I also like sign of ceaseless devotion. Like he's been trying to search for the princess, right? He's not, it's Braid, so it's like all the time stuff is reversed. He's not like married to her in the past, and now he's like going back to find her again, like in some of the other worlds. This is more, it's like she's this idealized vision, this kind of like ghostly apparition of truth, and he's like devoted to that, and the ring is this symbolic thing of like a marriage in the future rather than in the past. So let's just hop into the puzzles, and we'll see some of those themes play out in the art style and some of those other rule breaks. We got the pit, question mark, like what's going on here? The previous levels have all had a puzzle called the pit, but the puzzle actually freaking did some, it was a puzzle, versus this is just an empty, purposeless hole. You don't have to do anything. You can just go right on over here and into the next level. And we've got this big arrow telling us to place this ring, which in itself is a strange mechanic. Like you're literally like dropping and picking up an item. The ring, of course, has to be cartoonishly large because otherwise it'd be too small to notice. Already, even as is, it's like pretty weirdly small. Yeah, so we just get to kind of experiment with that, but maybe there was no good puzzle that Jonathan Blow could come up with to put in here to be the pit, or, but I think part of the message of this, and we'll see this more and more as the art continues, is there's like the hyper formal constraints of under which the game has been constructed are like overgrowing their original purpose, and they're just continuing to apply all these constraints to the game design. So like here we have this giant hole in the ground, even though it's lost its function. It's just exists only as a callback to the previous levels. Yeah. So we'll see that hyperformalism through the whole thing, right? So like maybe I'll hop out of the world for this one. So the game here is you have this ring which can slow down time by 5 times. So right at the center of the ring, things travel at 20% their normal speed. So you just got to slow down that wall, and that gives you plenty of time to grab the key there. But of course, one thing that's notable about this area is that it's the same exact level format as the earlier level from World 3. I will go, actually, let's just go into the next one, because that also I think is like copy pasted from an earlier world. Phase question mark, another remixed world. Here you have you got to slow down the clouds. Remember, previously there were like 2 streams of clouds, and one was like immune to rewind and the other wasn't. And now there's just one stream of clouds, but you can differentially slow the individual clouds, which, true to the puzzle's title, is no longer really adjusting the phase of the 2 streams. You're kind of making these one-off adjustments to locations. But we have the same exact geometry, same kind of like rolling green hills, except the grass is now this like crazy toxic green, and we have this like weird like marble stone and kind of like glowing green, like this used to be like foliage, in World 3, but now it's like this Baroque parody of foliage. So we'll just solve this one last guy. Here we have a problem where if we put the ring down here, then the next cloud won't come out until the first cloud disappears. So you'll see there it is. And so instead of slowing down the cloud, we've got to slow down ourselves by placing the ring up there with a helpful little flower to signpost the optimal place to put it. There we go. Sweet. All right, but let's go check out some of the other some of the puzzles that were inspiration for this. So here we've got, it's really like three in a row right here. So we have the pit with the rewindable objects, and then we have it there and back again with the same exact format of the location of everything, but done in this kind of like naturalistic style with little wooden beams everywhere and stuff like that. And then phase, this kind of like, happy forest area, a little bit of rain in the background, keeping things a little bit kind of magical and mysterious. But all the same, look at that. They even have a little cloud, flower up there, even though there's no purpose to it here, right? As kind of a forward nod to the flower in World 6. I mean, I think part of the purpose of this is just to make you introspect on the game design and realize the different ways. It's interesting that this is like the very same level, but you can accomplish the same goal by slowing this down rather than by grabbing the key and then rewinding back to the beginning. Same deal for the phase level, but we have this now like very alienating, strange stuff. The background, look, this is like a kind of bridal veil, like a bridal veil statue with if you look up above to like where the puzzle piece icon is, there's like a branching structure which looks like a tree, but I think it's like a nuclear chain reaction, right? So it's showing, it's kind of like a binary tree and it has all those dots in it. It looks like those physics images that come up in the descriptions of atomic weapons and stuff, where they show the atomic nuclei splitting and then hitting other nuclei and causing them to split, and on, creating this explosion. So it's kind of like ghostly images of the princess. We've got like a city in the background, and this will become more and more pronounced in the later levels. And this is again tying into the theme of like Tim in society, right? Previously he was in these kind of fantasy land, like nature realms, or at least that's how things started off. Then we had the introspective world 4 with like the things from Tim's past, the university architecture, like bells and columns and classical architecture, and kind of like baby toy blocks and stuff. And then the relationship world in World 5 with all these kind of domestic, it was like you're inside a house with all these bits of furniture that were sinking into the ocean. But now we're in society and we're like in this alienating cold society, and it's like snowing, it's smoggy, it's nighttime, we're outside, there's like these warm but kind of like creepy alien looking windows, we're kind of like out in the cold in the Manhattan streets and stuff, just like the beginning of the game. So in a way it's kind of becoming more like the setting of the city is kind of becoming more realistic, because let's see, I mean, it's so similar to what's outside Tim's house, right? So like that element of it it's becoming more grounded. It's like Tim in the real world and how he perceives himself in relation to society, rather than Tim on his crazy personal quest for the princess and all the symbolism of the castles and things like that. But then so much of the imagery is like totally surreal, right? So we have we have this like hyper-formal art style. Like Gone is, at least in these previous levels that were like a parody of the earlier ones, we had like some curves and some rolling stuff and whatever, like it was kind of pretending to be a natural landscape. But in these later areas, it's just like rectangles all the way. There's no like columns in the background. Like previously there would be like some pretense of like in the background layer of art there would be like little columns holding this up, but this is just like purely floating in the air. Like this cannon is just like in the air. So it's just like total just 2D puzzle game design worlds. And there's kind of like a mockery of the little art elements that were earlier there, to kind of, pretend that it was like a real world with gravity and stuff, and that everything needed structural support and a reason for existing. So anyways, let's get into the puzzles of this area. Cascade. So this is an original level, not based on any others. I mean, maybe loosely or something, but this is basically an original level to World 6. It is based on the kind of differential slowing that has to happen in order to make it across some of these things. So like this Goomba cannot progress far enough across the screen for me to bounce on him over here. You know, I can only get him like around here, and that's just not close enough to make it to the puzzle. So we got to slow things down, and the game teaches you about how the slowing down works, right? If I put it might be natural, like put the ring here, like I want, you know, the fireballs to slow down, but actually that just kind of makes the problem worse. It makes the fireballs denser because the fireballs slow down when they enter the ring and then they speed up when they exit it, but they're still being generated at the same speed. So let's see if we can. All right, we'll take it back. So the solution, of course, is you want to slow down the thing that's generating them, and then we'll still have everything kind of going at normal speed outside. And be able to just wait for a Goomba that makes it through. I think this one, oh. All right, let's see what we can do about that. Sweet. All right, so now for our next trick, we're gonna need to grab the key up here and then take the key over yonder to unlock this lever. This is like quite a lot of effort that we're going to in order to just obtain this this puzzle piece down here. Easier than that is probably the puzzle I should have started with is this one, where you bounce on a Goomba. It doesn't take you quite high enough, so wouldn't it be nice if you could bounce on a second Goomba, or maybe even a third, and then get the requisite altitude. All right, but back to that key. So we can use that same trick to, and of course now, unlike with the fireballs, with the Goombas, you want to be slowing down, you don't want to be slowing down the cannon. You want to be slowing down the, you know, the area where the Goombas are, so that you can get them to compress just like the fireballs below are compressing. Ooh. Alright, so now I got some altitude, and with that we can hop over to the other side. Grab that key, but the key is only a small part of the battle. So now we're gonna have to come over here, ferry this Goomba through. Oh, what a shame. Might have to wait a while for this one. All right, we're gonna make it on the next one. I got a good feeling about it. Oh, not quite. All right. So now we have slowed down the process of generating these fireballs enough to allow me to run through. which previously I think you can run through, and especially with placing the ring anywhere else except for on top. Like if you place it down below near that spike pit. By the way, that's why that spike pit is there, is to dissuade you from placing it in that exact location. So if you place it down below, then you can slow down the fireballs enough that you can run through with the key, but you can never escape. And maybe that's another reason why this was made into a lever rather than just putting the puzzle piece right there, was just to make it extra clear, like, because sometimes you get the puzzle pieces and then you have them forever if they're glowy green and stuff. So the lever might make it extra clear, like, no, you got to get out of here. Now I would another thing that I'd be worried about retrieving is the ring, but fortunately the ring resets when you leave the level, so I don't need to ferry another Goomba through. All right, so this is another level that's inspired by one earlier, namely the irreversible world from World 3. But instead of a no rewind rule, we just have to place our ring early to slow down, differentially slow this fella instead of the other. And so all of this challenge of the bunnies going after me is now superfluous, because if I rewind, it's no problem, as long as I leave the ring there. All right, here we go. You may be wondering why there is a giant astronaut suit above me and why there are like intermittent like hats and statues all around. We will definitely talk about that in the future, so no worries. But I'm going to tie that all together with the beautiful ending castle that shows up at the end of this world. It's a pretty simple puzzle, really. And again, just like how the pit has its kind of like functionless, like eerie form, where it's like taking the form of the game. These these puzzles are like deliberately designed as callbacks to the earlier levels, which, I mean, I think part of that is just because it's fun, because it's clever. It makes you think about the function of the levels and the different ways that they could interact with the mechanics. It also makes it clear that the levels aren't like pulling too many like super specific tricks. It's not like they only work because of their exact form, because hey, you can swap out a totally different time mechanic and kind of pull a similar thing. Like here you have just like a race between two platforms, and then you're going to slow one of them down. That's going to potentially work with a lot of different time mechanics that you might imagine. So here too we have a little game to be played with letting through some Goombas, which it seems like I'm totally good without even using the slow down mechanic, but I don't get much of a bounce out of just one. And so the solution here is you can freeze time with two of these down, but this guy is a problem. So you got to slow things down enough that you can open up all of those at once. And then you can have an endless stream of Goombas coming across, or at least two, I suppose. And then get to the puzzle. I think there's also a star here that features just basically doing that a bunch more. And then come over here and there might be a star around, or maybe I'm confusing that with the original version of this level in World 4. Yes, we've got like a cowboy statue up there. We've got the princess here. This is like some kind of like a Ottoman Empire dude or something with like a little cap. Over on the left of the screen there is like a military marine with a beret and some kind of a sharp looking uniform. We'll talk about the hats. All right, elevator action, which I think on the way there involves running across the screen because, of course, it's easy to run against the direction, in the direction of the fireballs. But then it seems like I'm totally doomed in making it back now, right? Because I gotta run, into their direction. Now I can place this here and slow things down a bunch, and then I'm all right because the fireballs take so long to produce. But then, of course, for the future ones that are not slowed down so much, I'm totally screwed. So the solution to this is going to involve placing the ring on this platform and having the platform cruise down so that it can slow them one by one. This also definitely has a star, which involves leaving this bunny alive and like ferrying it up the elevator, which, I mean, I love it because I always love bunny combat in Braid. All right. Wait a second, we didn't do that. We're trying to keep this bunny alive. All right. Not gonna make it. But no problem, there's no rush on this one because the ring will just come to a stop down there at the bottom. And won't continue on past. Cool. Nice that you can even grab the ring through the diagonal, I believe. Which is kind of a bug. Alright, we don't want that bunny to fall off. Don't do it. Good. Alright, so now this is some fun stuff. I think this is the first time in the game that we've dealt with the bizarre falling ladder mechanic. Alright, so we have this dilemma here where the natural thing they want to do is put the ring over here in order to slow down the fireball production to make that a more manageable platforming challenge. Although if you watch speedruns, you can actually solve this without putting the ring here, just by using some kind of fast action rewind magic hopping off that green platform. But anyways, so we want to put the ring here, but if the platforms move too fast, I can't get over there with the ring slowing me down. In fact, I need the ring to be on the platform in order to slow the platforms down. So this is where we got to use that platforms that turn you green trickery, because then we can hop right on here, and then we can start rewinding, and we will not run back over there because we're standing on the screen, but the ring weirdly is not affected by that, and so it'll pop back over there. Now of course the platforms aren't going to move, but we can I think rewind to a time when they were up here. Yeah, perfect. All right, so now, assuming I don't totally screw this up, I should be able to platform my way across. Nice. Get this kind of bouncing ladder as the platform descends, as a premonition of the totally bizarre mechanic that Braid is about to unleash on us. All right, take two on this final elevator action puzzle. The puzzles in Braid get very complex sometimes, and I want to present you guys a nice cleaned up version that doesn't have me like bouncing all around trying to remember and think through like how the various different things work. So this is like the one above, actually. Like I mentioned with the speedruns and being able to complete it without the ring. This is a puzzle that has a couple of different interactions where the ring and the kind of like panel that's turning Tim green play equal parts. So actually, I'll give it just a little bit more time here. So we see that we use the same kind of like irreversible trick to slow down the two panels. If you put the ring here, then that smaller platform can slide underneath the larger one. So that just gets it in position. Then we can drop this ladder. Unfortunately, the ladder is too short to get up there, but it does give us access to this area. And with the magic of the little rewind here, we can zip the ladder right back up. Now, of course, I don't want to let go of shift now, because then who's going to be left to pull that lever? So we can only really rewind until right up when when the moment that the lever was pulled. But that sounds pretty good to me. So now we're in a good position because we want to capture that ladder right when it's like here, right? But of course it's moving pretty fast. So we want to slow it down. Shit, I just went a little too far, so we're gonna have to reset it. So we're gonna want to slow that ladder down. Obviously, we can do that using the ring. Normally, such a move would also slow Tim down, but the fun of these green panels is that does not occur, and Tim can continue to zip back and forth. So we're going to pull that ladder right up there. Put a little ring there, and then we're still at full speed, with which we can climb and grab this. Now, there's even more tricks that you can pull here, right? Because this green platform is like very powerful. So I will have to reset this in order to maintain the puzzle piece. But you can even zip up to the top of the map using the fact that you can rewind while you still have that glowy green on you, and then the physics will propagate forward rather than Tim retracing his steps. So with that, you can end up attached to that ladder where it is, as pictured way up there. And yeah, let's set that up. All right, so we got our ladder. Gonna rewind it up there. And what we're gonna wanna do is run over and grab onto the ladder and then hit shift so the game will start rewinding and take me with it, because I'll be still attached to that ladder. Just like how when you rewind mid-jump, Tim keeps falling forward. You can't hover in midair. In the same way, if you rewind with him holding onto the ladder, it'll pull you up there. Nice. So then we get up above the level. So I don't have the bunny down here because I reset the game by walking out of the level too many times. But it's if you do have the bunny, you can just stand here, rewind until such time as you did get the bunny up here, and then you've got to take a big flying leap, bounce on the bunny when he's right in this spot. And I think even if he's on the ground, it doesn't even work. So you can do a kind of like double jump using the green, like bouncing on him and then rewinding and bouncing again. Or you can earlier when you're playing the elevator action level, you can have the bunny be jumping in midair, and so you actually come down from this green panel and hit the bunny like in midair, and then bounce, and you'll make it to the star. So anyways, it takes a little bit of cross coordination. And then I guess we're stuck here in a sense. Got to get our ring back, which would allow us to progress out of the level. But we've spent enough time here, so we will skip this one for now. All right, so now it's time for the final puzzle in Braid before all the end game craziness, and it is a lot of fun, and more fun with the panel that turns you green. Yeah, which I think maybe reflects like a bit of a weakness of the slow-mo mechanic. It's very interesting to think about, but it's hard for this to make puzzles in isolation just because it's only changing the relative speed of the objects, and so you need a lot of finicky timing, like in the Cascade level or the elevator action, the fireballs and stuff, in order to create viable levels out of that, and that makes things a little tough. So here we have this key. The key is gonna fall when I pull a lever, and it is gonna fall into the fire down there. So the question is, okay, like, how do you want to have the ring right there in order to slow down the key so that you can grab it before it falls into the fire. But on the other hand, you also need the ring here because, as usual, these fireballs are going too fast. And I can't make it up there without slowing down the cannon. This area is also interesting because the previous Cascade fireball things, you were able to, the cannon was located very far from the player. But here the player and the cannon start out in the very same spot, and it has this kind of firm ceiling that prevents you from jumping in order to emphasize that fact. So you've got to start out down here, slowed down just the same amount. So you think, well, at first it's no help to you because sure, the cannon and the fireball slow down 5 times to 20% normal speed, but so are you. But as you get farther away from the cannon, you lose that slowdown effect. So it's an interesting just way of getting the player to think more closely about exactly how the kind of like differential slow-mo works. So with that, we can get up here. We could pull this, but it just goes into the fire so fast. What we've got to do is get the ring way over yonder. We'll leave the ring here for a short period of time. Then we'll make our way back up. We'll see if we can make it. Nice. And then we'll use this magic of the green panel to zip the ring to its intended location. And this is kind of interesting just because, first, it's such a rare, like, action moment to have the ring falling through. But it also shows that, like, the ring is, like, slowing itself down. Like, it's slowing down gravity, causing things to fall more slowly in addition to, move more slowly in other ways. So anyways, you have this crazy, late game dramatic action moment, which I think makes this puzzle a lot of fun. And again, it's kind of unlike the rest of Braid. You're never dealing with, never before have you really had to think about the fact that keys fall, or that the ring falls. All right, so that is it for the puzzles of World 6. But I promised that I would talk to you guys about the hats. Look at all these hats. We've got a ball cap. We've got a football helmet, or maybe that's like it's like football or something. We have like a Native American hat. We've got like a ranger hat. And in the previous levels, we had all these super bizarre art of like cowboys and astronauts and soldiers and all this wild stuff. Let me get back to the Cascade level where it's really out in force. We've got the kind of princess outfit here, that cowboy outfit up top. It's kind of like Ottoman Empire. Like, what are all these uniforms all about, right? Is this just Braid being surreal? I think what this is, the hats, they all represent different professions, right? They're different professions, they're different identities, and those identities are like visions of directions that you could go in life, right? Because in this world, you have it's like Tim feels very alienated. He's in this city. There's all these different roles that that the world wants to put him into, that would make it easier to navigate life. There's all these different choices also. Like in the previous worlds, Tim was laser focused on the princess. He knew that was the right answer. That was the way to go. But there's been more and more uncertainty in each world, from like, I totally know the princess, she's been captured by a monster, she's right around the corner, through to like, well, maybe the princess is somewhere in the future and I can like sniff her out using trails of awe and inspiration. The world of time and decision, it was like a binary decision, like stay or go. But now that's become this branching factor of like many possible decisions, right? There's like an infinity of different people that you could be in life. Why become a game developer and make Braid? Why become like an aerospace engineer who makes videos evaluating Braid? There's like so many different arbitrary things that you could do in life, and it's kind of frightening and intimidating. And the city is this landscape where there's all these people living their different lives. Presumably everyone in their own way kind of considers that their life is the best, or it's the best thing that they could do, or it's what they wanted, or it's the best that they were able to manage. But obviously the range of solutions is like so different. People specialize in all these different things, and so here in this kind of like final castle, which is grown from the kind of like idyllic little structure on a hillside to this like grotesque, like sort of like crazy Resident Evil fortress screen filling abomination with all of this like kind of toxic green glow about it, and the parody of trees and vines and stuff. It's this like huge intimidating thing, and at the center of it all is this little boy, who doesn't have the hat or the clothes or anything. He's just in his like underclothes. He's scared. He's like looking out at the world. He's like, what do I do, right? Like, who do I choose to be? Like, there's all of these different paths, and so it's kind of about the arbitrariness that rules our lives. There's so many numerous paths, and it's unclear what's the right answer, right? Like in the real world, there's not something like the princess where it's like, oh, just learn the fundamental physical laws, and like that's obviously the most important correct thing to do. It's like this huge question in life, like, what's the thing that I should be doing right now that's really the best thing? And it depends on so many factors, and it's like so unclear, that you can get this feeling like you're standing on the edge of a precipice, or like floating in space or something, like unmoored from anything, because you're just drifting around in this world, feeling like lost in this like uncaring city, trying to decide what path your future life should take. So this world is like that far end of the spectrum, where the other spectrum is like the obsession of the princess and the ways that can go wrong. World 6 is kind of it's like showcasing the art of World 6, is showcasing the sort of horror of society and all of the different paths that seem arbitrary or irrelevant, or you don't want to choose them, or you don't know how to choose between them. This also ties in with the those like branching sort of like nuclear chain reaction things that we saw earlier, the big tree that would split and split and split above each of these little uniforms, like a princess bridal dress, and I think that also kind of refers to the arbitrariness, right? Like the constantly branching decisions that we make in life. That our life, it's not just a binary stay or go decision, but it's an endless series of decisions about little things that define who we are. And Tim is like seeking something universal, something fundamental. But instead he's just being confronted with all these kind of societal BS of like, well, you could be a football player, and it's like, well, where's the ultimate truth in being a football player, or a businessman, or any of these other archetypes that are pictured lining the castle walls here. So we'll meet this dinosaur here. He says, oh, oops, okay. This is still this is actually text left over from my More Now Than Ever mod when I was like experimenting with replacing the text files. What the dinosaur is actually supposed to say is, "It took you so long to get here, but at long last, I can tell you that the princess must be in another castle." It took you so long to get here, obviously being a reference to the slow motion ring, but also I think a reference to like, it took you your whole life. Like you specialized in like being this crazy physics guy and like, doing the Manhattan Project and like learning all these fundamental rules and seeking the princess. Took you all this time to get here, and now that you've arrived, like at the end of that road, you're no longer that like little boy in the underclothes. You're like Tim with like the watch and the tie and everything, and you've like learned all this stuff. You've committed yourself. You can't just go back and do life again. You made a choice way back in World 2 about like how to live your life, and you've been living it, and it seems like it used to seem like the princess was close, and now it seems like she's far away. She might not ever exist. The dinosaur says, "But at long last, I can tell you that the princess must be in another castle." It's like you voyaged all this way, but you should have been going in a different direction the entire time, right? So I think that's another commentary on just all the different life paths, and that kind of like bitter disappointment of realizing like you could literally, almost everyone does, right? I don't know what the correct life path is, but by definition, most people are not doing it because there's a lot of different life paths out there, and so people go through their whole lives with with a certain attitude or aim, and it's all wasted because if it's just going in the wrong direction. So to wrap things up, let us put this puzzle together. I really like this puzzle, or this painting. We've got Tim here looking like very like lost and defeated, kind of like uncaring, or like in a funk. He's in the snowy city, just like depicted throughout the level. And then we got some stuff. We have this image of the princess here, like in neon, this kind of glowing princess image in the city lights of Manhattan. We also have over here a corner of like a propaganda poster, right? This is like Uncle Sam Wants You with this kind of like gaunt face here. So this is maybe another reference to like the World War II era. And then over here, we've got like advertisements. We have these little sodas. Remember over here, look at that. He's drinking the soda right there. He's got a little can of it, like as if he could have gone two ways, right? And then there's the other Tim up here who's like chasing after the princess, maybe because he caught the image of the princess in that city when he was like wandering and considering all the different life paths. And then in this guy, he was just like sold some consumerist BS by our shallow society. He kept the ring in his pocket too long, conformed himself too much to the kind of common the goals that everyone else was telling him he should have, and the soda is not as satisfying as the search for the princess. But anyway, so there's those soda ads up there. And then down here in the corner, of course, we have the ring. And the ring is, it's like lying in this pile of like trash or maybe rubble or something from like a fallen apart building or a construction zone. This is maybe like so many things, you can kind of read it forwards and backwards, right? Why is the ring in the trash? He's like leaving it. Maybe he just threw it out. Like, it's been in my pocket so long. It's just slowing me down. I don't need it. I'm going to give up my obsession. I'm going to like leave it all behind and just trash the ring and walk away. And he's taking one kind of sorrowful last glance at it that would kind of match his expression. But I also kind of think that it, and of course it shows the isolation, right? The society is not tuned into this. The princess is this kind of hidden image. The people are walking by uncaring. They don't notice this like magic kind of like golden object that's here. So I'll talk about this more in the episode where I do the ending, and I'll talk about the cross connections between the worlds. But this is another way to read this is like Tim first discovering the ring, right? If you're kind of reading this backwards, World 6, where he's like he's unsure, he's lost, he doesn't have the princess obsession yet. And, you know, then maybe he like catches on to it. And this is like that first moment where he's like, oh, maybe there is something bigger that I should be aspiring to, or something that I should be seeking after. So just two ways to read this painting. Another potential thing that I saw someone point out is that this kind of looks, it's like the ring is around something. It's like around a little spiked piece of rubble. But if you kind of zoom in on just this corner, that maybe this is like an atomic explosion mushroom cloud, right? And if you watch videos of atomic bomb tests, they do have this kind of fiery ring structure because the mushroom cloud is like this cylindrical kind of like donut shaped, torus shaped, I guess, like vortex of, you know, the hot air coming up on the inside, and the hottest air kind of spiraling around in the middle. So they do have this kind of like this look. So maybe like this part is the mushroom cloud, and then you have the kind of smoke getting stepped out from the ground here. And then the thing that makes this slightly more than just a bunch of totally crazy unhinged speculation is that this rubble here could be like the mountains of Nevada, right? So this is like some test site or something. So maybe it kind of ties in that way as well. But anyways, there is our painting, and with that, our analysis of World 6 of Braid. I hope that was enjoyable and interesting. And tune in another 2 weeks or so, and we are going to cover the kind of how I see the overall story as it goes backwards from World 6, and then finally, of course, diving into the exciting and twist-filled ending of the game, now that we can access the problematic at the roof of Braid's world.